is that going to be? Fashion designers throughout the years have reflected social change through their collections, using the body as a canvas. They've been pushing boundaries, creating, but also causing controversy. Now, these dresses reflect the evolution of the iconic French fashion house, Dior. I'm Stephanie Decker in Doha, and on this edition of Talk to Al Jazeera, we'll be joined by its creative director, Grazia Chiuri, and we'll be discussing whether, with the challenges facing the world today, like climate change and inequality, is fashion still relevant? Grazia Chiuri, creative director of Dior, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. I want to start by laying the foundations of what's going to be our conversation. You have worked at the pinnacle, really, of high fashion for 10, 20 years. The world has also changed over this time. We're facing, global challenges, climate change, mass migration. But at the same time, everyone always has to get dressed in the morning. I want to ask you initially, what is your definition of fashion and where does that fit in today?
I really believe that fashion is something that helps to express ourselves. I was really conscious about this pandemic crisis, how many difficult there are today to work in fashion, because we have to be conscious that we have to work in idea of sustainability. But at the same time, I think that sustainability is something really faceted. We are speaking about the ambient, the environment, but at the same time we are speaking also about the work that in this industrial, because now fashion is an industrial. And we are also to understand that fashion help to define ourselves, our personality. I don't think, honestly, that also in the future people want to dress themselves all in the same way, like a uniform, because it's a way to express ourselves.
There are huge challenges because the reputation of the fashion industry in general is the impact they're having on the environment. I think the UN issued a report saying that basically the footprint of the entire fashion industry in terms of carbon emissions was more than the aviation and the shipping industry put together. You are the creative mind behind Dior. Is enough being done by the big fashion houses to address this issue?
I think that the fashion houses are the most interested to work in this direction. That is, in any case, a transition moment, because we have to organize ourselves. Also, that I have to say that we work with the supply that are really sensitive in this argument. We are not to forget that all the supply chain is done from small, medium companies, very often familiar companies, that they work close with their factory. So they have the personal interest to maintain the environment well. The real problem is not for me like a creativity that I'm working a big brand, a luxury brand, that can also to give me the opportunity to select material that are recycled, that are really coherent with this vision, because are more expensive. It's more difficult for young designers that want to found their personal brand to work today in fashion, because that means for them to have more investment for their personal brand. So is an argument that is very faceted and very complex.
Is it something that's close to your heart? Because, I mean, Dior was, there's a couple of reports that say that it wasn't transparent enough when it came to sustainability and certain things like this. For you as a creative director, and you've also, you do use politics through your fashion. Is enough being done, do you think, when it comes to the environment?
I think that there is a big confusion in the audience about fashion. When we speak about fashion, we put all together big company, small company, medium company, brand. And at the same time, there is another big problem that we are speaking for us about luxury brand, couture brand. Our idea is not to be big quantity, but to work in luxury, in one-of-a-kind couture. Our production are really different from other brands that are more democratic in some way, also in the price. And the idea is also about timeless. Our idea is to move our brand and to create something that you not throw away after one times. So the idea is to create something that is part of your wardrobe and that you can pass also the future generation, your daughter. Is something that means to be a luxury brand that work with an idea of couture and with an idea of timeless.
So your creations, I think there is a link, however, you are at the elite when it comes to couture in the fashion industry, but I think it does trickle down, right? It does inspire like fast fashion. It does, people look at the ideal and then, it does get regenerated for those who perhaps have more access to it in that middle level. Do you feel that responsibility all the way down?
I think that we have to think that the people desire. That's the real thing. So, and I started to work in fashion many years ago when I was 20 years old. And at the time, fashion was not what is today. It was a small company, familiar company, and with a small audience, with a new communication, with a new media, fashion became something more popular, more mainstream in some way. And it's normal that the people desire to what they say, what they say and what they also sometimes celebrity wear. So it's normal that there are many different companies that reproduce or make a different way some element to create a new business. I think it was also an idea that fashion has to be more democratic, more approachable for everybody, not for elite. So the question is really difficult because the risk is also that you are not inclusive, that you don't give the opportunity to people that has not the same economic level that can buy something for them.
I want to ask you about the creative process that you have. There's been challenges within the fashion houses as well when it comes to things like cultural appropriation. I think the world has become so globalized that there's immediate accountability when things get addressed that people feel sensitive about, whether it's race or religion or identity or gender. There have been accusations that, Dior had to pull a campaign. You're not the only fashion house who've tread into that minefield, if you will. What would you say to those who feel that the big fashion houses are out of touch with the movements, the more grassroots movements on the ground?
I think that we didn't receive enough education in this sense, especially in the past. My generation didn't receive education about this argument, gender, cultural appropriation, colonialism, because in my school in Italy, it's clear we was all Italian. Our base of culture was Greek and Italian. So I received a very West with the reference that are really Greek and Roman. I studied that after. I understood all these arguments after in my life. But we have to say that there is a big part of the designer also in the past that have no idea about this argument. We receive a patriarchal education, Western education. So it's very difficult. Now is completely different with the web. You can find information everywhere. You can find book everywhere.
Fashion also is there to push boundaries, right? To cause debate, perhaps to shock, Is political correctness, in a way, how difficult is it for you as a creative mind when you push perhaps innovation or creativity and where it crosses to these issues that we're discussing to be offensive to some people? Like, how difficult is that for you as a designer? And does it affect fashion? Should fashion be something that pushes the boundaries and perhaps does make people uncomfortable?
I think that fashion is more to speak about contemporary. and to be in conversation more that push the boundary. I think that fashion is political like all the other things. Everything is political for me. All action are in some way political because speak about humanity. Now we have a different sensibility. So I think that we are interested to create something, a world that could be able to be more equal is a big word for the new generation, or equal in opportunity, because that's, I think, is a great things. To
you
have
mean gender?
No, in general, all the opportunity in your life about your skill, about to approach the education. This is very important, I think. A fashion can help in a different way. I'm lucky that with Dior I can do small project, but that's are very important for me. When we go around the world, when we try to support artisans that are very good skill and creativity, and also to help them to maintain their craftsmanship, that means also their identity. And to be in conversation with a different background, that is the historical house of Dior. That could be help for them also to see like they can evolve their business, their creativity. I really believe in a community work. That is very important for me to work together is in a way to create a sisterhood around the world, and that's the goal for me.
When you talk about politics being everywhere, when you started at Dior, you immediately, one of the first messages that was very visual in your shows was that of feminism, as you've been touching on as well, supporting women. Why did you choose that, and why did you feel so strongly about making a real point about that?
Because when I was in Dior, nobody spoke about my career or my curriculum. They spoke only about that I was the first woman creative director in Dior.
Was that offensive to you, that they focused on your gender so much?
No, because to speak about gender means that you don't look about my talent. I think that I was shocked and I was really surprised because I worked so hard in my career that I think that you have to speak about my creativity, not about my gender. I feel myself like Maria Grazia. I have not defined myself like a woman or man. I define myself like Maria Grazia. That gender is a cultural approach. So it's something that in some way don't interest me.
No, I understand exactly
I'm
what
more
you mean.
interested in creativity. So
your visions.
In my vision, when I met someone, I'm interested to speak with the person because we have something common. I don't think is a man. It's something that doesn't interest me. So I was really surprised. And at the same time, I think it was a necessity for me because Dior silhouette in some ways so popular, so famous, but in some ways also embody an idea that is stereotypical idea about the body of a woman. And I think that we had to give a different idea of femininity, because femininity is something very faceted. There is no one way to define this word.
And often in fashion, it's the man that dresses, that designs for a woman, right? Why is that?
I think that that's come from this idea that the creativity, the genius is a man. I never listened to someone to say that the genius is a woman. So
it's time to change.
It's very easy for me to answer this question. I grew up in Roma, where I studied in art, only Michelangelo, Raphael. I don't remember one woman in my book in art,
Right.
because the genius was, but nobody said that at the time it was impossible for women to be a painter, to be a sculptor. It was not inaccessible. So nobody explained me. I arrived to discover the book of Nochlin that speak about the historical vision, why there are not so many artists, women artists, but it is something that is about our history. So to know our history explain very well also today. That's was the shock, but for me, because I would like to read the book when I was 12 years old, that could be helpful for me. I think that many young girls have some doubts to a school of art because they believe that it's very difficult for them to become an artist.
Do you find that it was more difficult for you, if we talk about the role of a woman, do you think you had more challenges due to being a woman, or it's irrelevant? Or was it more difficult for you to get to the top of your career? Were there challenges because you were a woman?
I think that you have to work very hard, that he has all the time to demonstrate something. I don't understand
to prove
why.
Something.
To prove something. I don't understand. I don't think that the man normally has this kind of approach in their career in general. This is not equal. I think that it's super difficult. There are many women that work in fashion, not so many at the high level, but also in the other career.
It's one of the later questions, actually, I wanted to ask you about identity. Exactly this. I think your career and I think fashion, in a way, sums up how women are judged, how we look like, what we're wearing, how we present ourselves. You know, men judge us, women judge us, we judge ourselves. You know, and I think, you know, you work in such an elite, you know, haute couture. I mean, these pieces are masterpieces, and it's very few can afford it. However, I think the world we live in today, especially young women, you're talking about young girls who are exposed to, you know, Instagram and social media, everything is filtered, the body is perfect, the hair is perfect, the skin is perfect. What would you say, from your experience, to like the young women of today, when it comes to embarking on lives and whatever career they choose? Like, what have you learned from your journey that would give strength?
I think the new generation is more conscious that has about many arguments, and also when I use Instagram, they use much better that us, because they decide what they want to show about them. Is their decision. I think that we have to be free to expose ourselves in a way that we want. The important thing is the education that you receive, and that if you are conscious about what are you doing. I don't want to be critics about a way or absolutely, but the important thing is your decision, that you don't choose because you want to please someone. That's the very important thing.
So it's
for
very
me.
personal.
Yes, this is your choice. Why not? This is your decision. I think that the women has to use their voice. That's the important thing for me. And but the men too. And we have to respect all the difference. That's for me a big step for the future. That we respect each other, and all that the fact that we are all different and unique. And this is the beauty also.
Do you think the fashion houses, touching on that point, then are inclusive enough when it comes to perhaps, you know, these days, you know, race, religion, culture, in terms of who's working there? Or is it still a very elite?
I think that we have to work on it. To speak today about inclusivity, something so complex, we have to work on it. Every day. It's not something that you decide with a slogan or it's like sustainability. I don't think that you can do only a t-shirt in organic cotton. It's not enough. You have to change the mentality, the culture.
And that takes time.
Yes, we can speak about transition. We can move in this direction. We can believe. We can work every day about this argument. But if don't became part of your culture, your vision, is something fake. Is only to
Lip service.
yes. Is like. To be okay, I'm safe because I did organic cotton T-shirt. It's not enough.
Ticking a box.
Yeah, it's not enough.
You, I think the various creative directors that have passed through the House of Dior have all somehow changed the initial vision to their own, not changed, perhaps adjusted it to as times went on. How have you changed, do you feel, the vision of Dior, and where are you deciding to take it? Do you have a vision of where to move it? What is your, how do you want to bring it up to the modern times, let's say, these days?
I think is that from the history of Dior and his personal life, I can bring many reference from him, from his relationship with the women around him, with the relationship with his sister, Catherine Dior, and also in his work. But I have to translate that in the contemporary way. I say all the time that I approach Dior like a curator, and when you are like a curator, in some way you select the aspect that you think are close with you, with your personal story. And at the same time, I want to move the brand in the future, and I want to give my point of view. But we have to accept that the Dior house has a huge history where there was many important creative directors in the past, and all these creative directors, like me, wrote, and I'm writing now, a chapter of this history. But the important thing is to be in connection with the women. That was the first idea of Mr. Dior.
You're here in Qatar, part of the Qatar Museum's Designer of Dreams exhibition. What are we expecting to see? What are you expecting? Will people take something away from that? Will they learn something? Or is it just, I mean, obviously we're going to see exquisite pieces. What is the exhibition about?
I hope that this exhibition can be seen especially from young people that can be inspired about creativity. That's the important thing, that they became curious about the creativity. And I think it's very important also that in an exhibition there are not only the final dress, but there are also the toile, so that they understand also the process that there is behind creativity. Because sometimes, especially in the young generation, that they see the collection on the video, in Instagram, this kind of media, they don't perceive very well all the work that there is behind dress, in the atelier, the relationship,
craftsmanship.
Craftsmanship. I hope that they are inspired from that, and curious also to approach that. I think, for example, also in the final shop, it's very interesting that they made all the postcard of the dress inside the exhibition that could be inspire them to create them something different with this reference. Is in a way to promote creativity, but not only the final product, but all the process that there is behind the creativity.
And finally, speaking of creativity, I mean, this has been your career, your journey. I mean, you've achieved, you're at the pinnacle of what is elite fashion. What have been the challenges along the way? I mean, you said you had to work very hard. I mean, the reputation of the fashion industry is that it's a tough place to work. I mean, there's the famous movie, you know, the devil, like, does the devil wear Dior?
No, we change every day. I change every day. This work change every day. And everything changes. So what is the future? It is very complex. For me, it's very important to explain very well what is fashion, because probably the idea of a fashion is more something entertainment, something that is superficial, something...
Some people say it doesn't mean anything.
Yes, but it's not true. It's not true. The complexity of this territory that is fashion is very complex. Speak about humanity, speak about us, speak about our body. So it's very important. Probably we have to promote an approach to fashion more intellectual, more that the people understand more what there is behind fashion. Behind textile style, behind embroidery, speak about really our identity.
How we feel about ourselves.
Feel ourselves, our body. So are all arguments that are really, really important in general.
Okay, Maria Grazia Chiuri, Creative Director of Christian Dior, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.